Thank you and welcome into this video. I would like to take you through different treatment of eTIMS compliant invoice. So here I have two eTIMS compliant invoices you can see here, but these two eTIMS compliant invoice need some special treatment, and you need to understand this so that you don't end up in trouble this year when trying to do your returns, since you know right now any item which you purchase from the supplier, you need to claim the expense side using validated expenses or validated purchases, or what we can call validated input side. So as you can see, these two invoices, they are eTIMS compliant, and the reason why you can be able to verify if these invoices are eTIMS compliant is very easy. So an eTIMS compliant invoice must have these elements here. One of the elements, it must contain the KRA PIN of the supplier, and you can see it here. This invoice must also contain the supplier's name, who is here. This invoice also, it must contain a QR code, which is here. You can see a QR code here. That QR code must have a CU number, which is the control unit number, which give it a special identification in eTIMS. There must also be an invoice number. So this invoice must have an invoice number. So they'll show you where it is right now. So this is the invoice number. This invoice must also have an invoice date, which is here. So these are some of the essential elements of an eTIMS compliant invoice. To go from there, this invoice must have an invoice description. So this is the description of the item which you have bought, the quantity, the rate or price of that item, the unit of measure, and the total amount. And in case there is any application of VAT rate, it is here. But the important element in an invoice is the KRA PIN of the supplier, the supplier's name, the date of the invoice date, and the quantity of that item, the rate, the unit of measure, and the amount. So those are some of the elements which you get into an eTIMS compliant invoice, and a QR code which you can scan and know if the invoice was fiscalized or was validated or not validated. So here we have now two invoices, and this was our case. And this invoice, they need special treatment, though being TIMS or eTIMS invoice. They need special treatment when it comes to treating them when adjusting your sale or the gross turnover which you made. So this first invoice, you can notice there is a difference with the second invoice, but you need to be very curious to notice that difference here. So the difference here is that one of these invoice, it will auto-populate the data in both the customer side and the supplier side. So this is the second invoice because it has the customer PIN with it. So it means because we have the PIN of the supplier and the PIN of the customer here, it will operate on both parties. It will auto-populate the data in both parties. But when you come to the invoice number 1, you notice that this invoice only contain the KRA PIN of the supplier. So what does this mean? This invoice will just populate the data in the side of the supplier, and in the side of the customer need now to do the manual upload of this invoice in iTax portal in order to claim these expenses. And this will hurt a lot of people because you get an eTIMS compliant invoice, but you don't notice that it doesn't contain your TIN, or you are not directly invoiced by the supplier. And then when it comes to the claiming of the expense, and maybe you lose these tax invoices, you get into problem where you have made a gross turnover or a sale, but you not be having any expenses to defer the sale which you made. So that is the difference which you'll be looking at. So to know if the data is automatically auto-populated in iTax portal, you'll be noticing your KRA PIN will be appearing in auto-populating in that tax invoice. But in case it doesn't populate in the tax invoice, you notice that the data will not be auto-populated, and that is the core difference between these two invoices, which we need to note. So moving from that, let me cancel a disturbance there. Moving from that, we need now to understand the special treatment of this. So in this, under this scenario where the KRA pin of the customer is already here, when you get into the iTax, this data will already be populating here, auto-populating here. So you just be coming here, you choose income tax, you choose the year, and you filter by the period, because here you can be able to filter different periods. So the purchases will be appearing here. In case you issued a credit note, they will be appearing here. So this is the scenario of the, I wanted to think is the scenario of the invoice 2, which contain the customer PIN number. So when we get to the invoice number 1, which doesn't contain the customer invoice number, now you need to go to the manual method, which we can get it under the Excel workbook. So how do you do that? When you come to the Excel workbook, at the section, the sheet number T, income computation self, there is a section which is named section 6, which is at row number 31. So this is where you need to come and declare that amount of that invoice. And before you come and declare this amount, you need first to do the manual upload in the iTax portal. So I'll demonstrate to you how you do the manual upload. So before you come and claim this amount in this invoice in your Excel sheets, under the manual upload of eTIMS invoices, what do you first need to do? So let me explain this concept. So what you need to do, basically, you need to get into your iTax portal. You come to where we have returns, and then come to a section here which is being called income tax return adjustments. So these are manual adjustments which you made. But when it comes to eTIMS, this is not a problem, because in eTIMS you get that for an invoice to experience real-time fiscalization of data, it must contain those two elements, the TIN number of the customer and the TIN number of the supplier. So it will be very easy, since the data will already be auto-populated in the portal. When you come here, you need to choose the period. Maybe now we are in period 2026. You need to click next, then click OK. When you do that, you need to come here and download this comma saved value, or CSV document as we commonly know it, and then click OK. So this sheet will open. So these are comma saved values. So just open here. Let me open adjacent to our document here. So what you need, basically, you need to come. Last year, 2025, KRA gave an exemption where the PIN number of the supplier was not a must. But now this year, we are not lucky, because the PIN supplier, or the KRA PIN of the supplier, will go handy in handy with all these details. So when you do the omission of the TIN of the supplier, you notice you'll be getting an error when uploading this sheet in your iTax portal. So what do I mean? Immediately you get an invoice from suppliers more so in town, always confirm that that supplier PIN appear in the invoice, because I have received a lot of scenarios last year where a lot of suppliers are failing to disclose their KRA PIN with the customer. So you need to ensure it is in your invoice. So this, you need to come here and populate now the data. Maybe we can take of this scenario 1 where we had LG. So you just come here and choose and populate this data here. So the company is Opalnet Limited. So just come here and choose the PIN of the name of the company. So I can use the rower cap, Opalnet Limited. Then you need to come here and take the invoice number here from here. So this invoice number is very long, so don't know if I can be able to copy it. So just a minute. I need to stop this pen so that I can be able to highlight. Let me see if I can be able now to copy what I want. Hopefully I'll be able to copy and paste. So cannot be able to copy and paste. So you come here and type now invoice number. We just use a hypothetical one, which is 160, 160, 155, 66. Then you take the invoice date based on what appear here. So that's why it is important. So it is 20th November 2025. So it is 20th November 2025. So it is on 20th November 2025. You need to choose the subwrite description. So the subwrite description here. So the subwrite description which we have here, it is they were these items. So we can say it is electronics based on the invoice. So it is electronics here, and the supply amount was so you take the gross amount inclusive of the VAT element. Is 65,795. 65,795. When you populate now the customer TIN, which I don't have as per now because I didn't want to disclose it, so you need to come here, save this document here. You can come and choose to save. So don't save as Excel, as XLSX. Just continue as it is so that it is saved as comma saved value. And after doing that, you can get back into your iTax portal. Come here, choose that CSV file here. After doing the population, then choose the supportive document, which was the company was I can come here and choose the recent because I had already opened these files here. Was LG, and submit. Simple like that. So hope it will not submit because I have not included some detail. So and submit. So the year is wrong because we are supposed to go day, month. So and row 2. So and submit, and it will go through. That is the scenario where you are having now an invoice which did not experience real fiscalization of data for both parties, which is the customer and the supplier. And that is the difference between those two invoices. When you declare now that amount of 65,795 in the iTax portal here, and you generate the acknowledgement number, you need now to get into your Excel sheet and come and populate that amount. Maybe you can assume it was just a general business. So it was just general business. So you just come here and claim it here. So it was 65,795, and you are done. So in order to conclude this, what I would like to advise is that this year, instead of piling up these invoices, just take a tendency of doing monthly upload of these invoices in iTax portal. When you take this approach, come the end of the year, you will not have a lot of problem trying to aggregate all the receipts of the expenses, because already they will be in the system. So you'll just be taking the sales or the gross turnover which you have made, resting the expenses, and then reporting the profit which you made, which is because we tax a profit. So we don't tax the turnover, we usually tax the profit. So then what you also need to reconsider is when you get to these suppliers, you need to notice a lot of suppliers, more so in Nairobi, I have noticed they are giving people receipts. And you have to notice if you have been given an invoice or a receipt, you need to confirm here. In most scenarios, a receipt you will have the name of that supplier and their only telephone number, but rarely will you get in that receipt their KRA pin. So that is the method which you can use to differentiate this. But in this scenario, when you are making any purchase right now, you need to request for an eTIMS-compliant invoice and tell the supplier, kindly invoice me, so that you'll be able to enjoy the auto-population of data. As you notice, KRA, they have a new proposal where the data, they'll be using the auto-populated data or the web method, where you notice KRA is trying to limit the self-assessment which was there, and now taking the method of now assessing you. So that is what they are trying to do, but indirectly, by saying that they'll be using the auto-populated data, which in most scenarios, they will not be easily be editable. So you need to be careful when doing transaction this year. So basically, hope I have shared something and some intrigue when it comes to these invoices. In case you have any query, you can reach me using at a personal level using my contact in the description. So thank you for watching, and have a nice day ahead.